life was, and I don't even think about it now because I finally found you.
Hi guys, welcome to another video on May in Bloom. I hope you guys are well wherever you are and that you've been taking such great care of you in these last few months and again enjoying the warmer seasons. I really wanted to make a video like this for a while because I think it's something that is so relevant for us, especially on this channel, that even though I speak a lot about holistic living, I feel like one of the underlying, at least as I've gotten older, like I'm really diving more into womanism and that whole feminism, but also that aspect of what kind of woman I'm growing into, what kind of women I want to continue walking towards intentionally. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this on this channel because this month specifically, if I upload this in May, has been my 30th May month on this earth. And becoming 30 or turning 30 was a year that was quite important for me. It was a year I always looked up to in some way, because not only do I find it just aesthetically beautiful, like 33, but also like learning about all these ways that it's interpreted as a part of your, some call it your Jesus year. It's a spiritual space that you're entering into. There's a lot of things surrounding it that I just really connected to. But on that subject, I also started thinking a lot about getting older, and I think I have talked about similar themes on this channel, but more around what is expected of us as we get older. But I think this particular subject for today, I wanted to focus more about how we can, what kind of relationships we have with ourselves as women as we age. And I wanted to share just a few things around that with you guys. I feel like it's a subject that has a lot of potential for even more than the things I'm probably going to share today, but just a few of the things that I've been thinking about as somebody who is getting older. I don't feel like I ever was particularly afraid of getting older. I think I was more from the other side, in the sense of afraid of the things you hadn't accomplished or had to accomplish by a certain age. But I do also recognize that now that I'm getting older and older, and also being seen by younger and younger people, because before you used to be part of the young group, like the young people, so of course you don't think about getting older. But now there is clear divisions of different generations of youth, you know, of people who are full adults and they're like 23, 24, and you're like, oh my goodness, you're a decade younger than me and you're a full adult as well. So where am I, right? There's like this reflection back on you and how you feel about aging, and how you feel about where you are specifically. But I will say that there's a few things that I have learned along the way and that I'm also continuously practicing in order to sustain an intentional approach to my own aging. And I think it's quite important that we as women talk about these kinds of things openly. Like when we grew up and we would watch TV, there was like this idea that a woman at a certain age should stop saying her age because it's embarrassing and why she's still breathing. And I always found that kind of weird in a sense that, okay, so you get to a certain age, whereas men didn't have that same feeling about their aging or their age, but women were supposed to a certain degree stop aging. I don't know if it was a certain age that people had decided. And I'm speaking about this as a African woman raised in Europe, but also very much aware that this was particularly something I saw a lot in the Eurocentric cultures. I would say that growing up in an African household, I really feel gave me a different grounding in getting older than if I had just grown up with the Eurocentric worldview on aging, especially for women. I feel like when I look at my aunts and my mom, there wasn't a lot about shame about getting older. There was, of course, the initial shame into womanhood, that you would reach a certain age and people would say stuff like, now you're at this age, you can't be doing that, right? But it wasn't a shame that, oh, you're getting older. It was more like there is a certain cut off from being a child, and then now you're just an adult the rest of your life. But it's not that you're an adult that is 21, an adult that's 23, like that didn't really matter. And I think I really also started to think about it from a sense of how even in most African cultures or indigenous cultures, that there is like the transition and rituals we have from our childhood, and then you are welcome into adulthood and into your manhood or into your womanhood, and then that's it. And then you do that for a while, and then you become an elder. There were like these 3 phases of transition. There was no need to like calculate or count every little part within those 3 specific phases of being a human. That you were a child, then you became a young adolescent, and then you became an adult woman or man through rituals, or what your body went through if you're a woman, like if you started bleeding, and then after that you were an elder, you know. Whereas in the Eurocentric worldview, it's very particular. Each age, it's very monitored and looked at, and I think there's a lot of age anxiety in our culture because of the very zoomed in approach we have towards each single age that we become, and it's not more of, oh, more or less, you know. And I feel like this is also very reflected in even how my mom grew up with her approach to birthdays versus how I grew up with my approach to birthdays growing up in Denmark, and being influenced by the society I grew up in. Whereas from our culture, like, people were born at some point, and there wasn't, at least in my family, I'm not saying this is true to every single African family or even East African or even Ugandan, but I felt like the particular celebration of each year wasn't necessarily a very important part of our heritage. It was more something we integrated and we started celebrating, but it wasn't natural for our culture to care each and every year. You were born, great, and then there were other things that you would celebrate, maybe the day you got married, the day you maybe had a baby, the day you died, you know. There was like a more phased out approach, you know, like every year you're still here. And I really I'm curious about how that affects people, especially women, growing up in such societies, without such a heavy focus on each year and each age, right? And going back again to my own upbringing, I think a lot of my healthier approach to aging is very much thanks to my mom and thanks to my aunts and so forth, because there was no shame around getting older. People would say that age without a feeling of fear or anxiety or shame. And if they did have that, they were really good at hiding it. It just seemed more of a fact. Sometimes I have to remind my mom how old she is because I always calculate based on when she had me. And I'm like, Mom, I'm turning this age, so you're turning this age. She's, oh, okay, yeah, that's true. But it doesn't affect her in her everyday life. Like, you know, I'm this kind of age of a woman, so I should be a certain way. And I think that's the part that is quite important, is because we become so fixated on each number, we also then become very fixated on what we're supposed to be doing at a certain time, at a certain age. And I also think, again, this is very heavily influenced, you know, to use one of my favorite terms, by Bell Hooks, rest her soul for all her great work she did leave us with, is like the whole umbrella of imperialistic, white supremacist, capitalistic patriarchy, in the sense that all of these things, in a way, also intersect from the values created from that umbrella, and that is that youth is overvalued. There's not a holistic way of seeing the world, of seeing people, of seeing your value in society. Even growing up in Northern Europe, you can see how most societies are built around the celebration of youth. And then once you become a certain age, of course, you are left to enjoy your life in some kind of hobby or whatever you want to do. But then at some point you're put away, and then the system, or because of our welfare system, you are taken care of, and you're just basically, what I feel, and this is the part of me that I know that, okay, that's not what I want for myself as I get older, and even my mom, the idea of just being put away and waiting to die. Whereas in more indigenous and holistic cultures, there is like a cycle of everybody having a value at a certain age, you know? Like, they used to often pair the very elderly with the young kids because they were healthy for each other. and you would then have the society, of course, upheld by the people in between to some degree, but every phase of your life had a value and a way of contributing to the culture you were part of. There wasn't this idea that only youth is the main focus and it's the only thing that is of value. You know, there was the wisdom and lived experience of the elders that had to be passed down to the younger generations. And so because you lived in more multi-generational families and communities, those things all had a value. And it kind of reminds me of a forest in the sense that even from the big to the small trees to the trees that graze the ground, everything has a value and it contributes to the healthy ecological system that the forest exists in. And I think by us being removed from those natural ways of coexisting in community that has age diversity, it kind of also gives us a fixation on aging in a way that is so superficial. Because youth is so overvalued, especially when it comes to women, that you feel like you get to a certain age and you are no longer useful to this kind of society. And I feel like by recognizing that this is a falsely created narrative based on creating hierarchies of power, by those who have had the most power in these kinds of society, I can then no longer over-internalize it for myself because I understand, oh, okay, this is not something that's specifically particular to me in the sense that I have to care about these kinds of value, right? But I do instead try to integrate in the way I live and even how I value my own aging process, a more holistic perspective, and even my own role in the community I'm a part of. That also helps me see my aging differently, because as somebody who grew up maybe in a house where I had much younger siblings, like one of my youngest sister turned 12 this year, and that's like a huge age gap. She was born when I was 21. That's 21 years of experience that hopefully can benefit my younger siblings, because I have lived a bit older, a bit longer. But not only that, not only my siblings, but other people I have community with. Something that I often talk a lot about with people I have holistic sessions with is exactly that if you have a lot of age anxiety, I would really recommend that you diversify your friendships and you diversify the age range of your friends. You get some older friends, you get some younger friends, because it then gives you a more holistic perspective of getting older. And I think this is particularly very important because in the way our Eurocentric societies are divided up, we are divided up through generations. And I think this is also, I think I talked about this in another video. Another form that we could argue is a form of divide and conquer. So you don't have that perspective, that holistic perspective you would have in being in a multi-generational home or multi-generational community where you see the value of everybody and you are equally responsible for passing down care to those who are younger than you or those who are older than you, and they have the same responsibility towards you. I think when you see it like that, you kind of have a less over self-centered perspective in getting older, because you see that as you get older, you also get to contribute to the communities you're part of in a different way. So I'll say for me, that's something particularly that kind of does ground me in my appreciation of getting older and lessens my anxiety around getting older, because I see beyond my value, for example, to the male gaze or to the corporate world, or to Eurocentric values of what an ideal human is, which again is very youth focused. And then I see it more in ways that for me create actual meaning, that create actual ways of sustaining the value of continuously growing and learning on this planet. So that's one of the things I do. I feel like having a decolonial approach to it, which is a very important practice that I try to carry in every aspect of my life. And if you want to learn more about decolonization, I did make a lot of videos, and I want to continue, of course, in the future on my other channel called Amantume that is mostly focused on decolonization. And I've been learning so many new things, so I hope that I will hopefully have more time in the next coming few weeks, months, to create more content on that spectrum as well, because decolonization is a continuous journey, but it's so very, very helpful, especially for people in the diaspora. I think it's useful for anybody, even people of Eurocentric persuasion, of Eurocentric upbringing or heritage, because this knowledge is not just liberating to us as formerly colonized people who now exist in a reality that has been normalized by the very Eurocentric worldview that colonized our ancestors, but I think it can also help liberate a lot of, because we have this idea that the European identity of way of being is singular, but it's not. In order for it to be what it is today, a lot of diversity had to be destroyed within Europe itself. A lot of diverse ways of existing and building community had to be destroyed on this very continent in order for it to exist. So I kind of feel that decolonization is for everybody, in that sense that we can all reconnect to our roots, our heritage, and not to say that everything in our past is glorious and amazing, but you can go back and you can learn so many things that can benefit you now that you can apply. So one of those things for me is having a different worldview that kind of gives me a more of a feeling of grounding and purpose, rather than the values that are often lacking in the very capitalistic European value system, to be honest. I think I mentioned earlier, like, a few things that I do to have a more balanced perspective in getting older. So number one, I mentioned already, diversifying your group of friends and making sure you have friends that are older than you, but also friends that are younger than you. And you resist the urge to see with despair people who are older than you, or even to see with envy people who are younger than you, but to see it as a harmonious balance of a community that needs different age groups in order to thrive, and you are playing your part in that as well. You used to be much younger, used to be a child, used to be a baby, used to be a child, then you were a young adult, and now you are a proper adult, and then one day you'll be an elder, and that's a beautiful passage if you get to complete that whole holistic cycle. So doing that is very important. Another thing is, of course, also when it comes to the kind of content you consume, be very mindful of it, because to be honest, I feel like there is more of a push, especially in some industry, to also diversify the age of entertainment. When you see advertisements, when you see TV shows, and so on and so on. So I would give a bit of a prop to that I think there is more awareness around that we need to see different age groups, and life doesn't just end after 35 and then suddenly everybody just disappears off the planet. I would say, obviously, watching and consuming content that also has a diverse age range. Follow some elderly couples or elderly people doing cool things that you think are fascinating. If you have a hobby you like right now, maybe look for people at an older age also doing those hobbies or learning those hobbies. That will just help in your mind to realize that there's a lot of things maybe I think that only belong to a certain age group, but I can continue doing it in my 40s, in my 50s, in my 60s, right? That will give you a different perspective, and I think also will lessen any age anxiety you might have. Another thing is obviously also how to care for yourself holistically. I think when we're younger, especially where I grew up or the age group I grew up in, I always felt that even to this degree, like where I work, there's like a huge variety of age. And there is this idea, because you're young, you should be out wasted every day. Like, you shouldn't take particularly good care of your body because these are your golden ages, and you should just be reckless, basically. And I feel like that's such a pity, because this is the time when you're supposed to be learning great habits that are going to sustain you throughout your life, thinking long term, like holistically, not just for this period. I'm not saying like don't have a blast, don't enjoy your life, but know that everything you do has consequences to how you are going to live your life moving forward. I would definitely say that I still felt like I got to enjoy a lot of my youth, but there was also this feeling of pressure about how you enjoyed your youth, particularly because maybe I didn't partake in a lot of the drinking culture or just the way of being, going out clubbing all the time, because I was still an introvert. Even when I wasn't religious and I didn't have the religion as an excuse, I just never was drawn to do a lot of those stuff all the time, right? And I lived a bit of a slower life, and I think part of it is also because I'm an introvert, but the other part is also because I really liked observing my age mates, and sometimes I'll see the things they did, and I would question, like, what value would that really bring to me? And do I really think that would be fun to do? If I thought something was fun to do, I would go ahead. I wasn't like torturing myself or limiting myself. I think I did make the best of the best I could do out of my younger days, my 20s, for example. But I do feel like I didn't over expand myself or over exploit my health as a young person, because it's a lot of things I passed on, like I didn't do and never really got into. And now that I'm older, there's no reason to take up those things like drinking or smoking or what have you. Whereas maybe now I have friends who are trying to quit those things because they all were drawn into them as part of like young people habits to some degree. And those things obviously have consequences on us as we get older. So if you are younger, just like a lot of like beauty industry tells you, like the quicker you start taking care of your skin, the better, which I think is great advice, I guess. But I think we have to have a more holistic perspective to that as well. That it's not just about so you always appear young and look young, but the idea of respecting the body and the vehicle that is going to carry you through life, and knowing that you have to learn to live in harmony with it and listen to it. And that's not just biologically and physically, but also mentally and spiritually. I think that's also another way that we can become better at going through life and as we age, because we build a better relationship with our bodies, we build better relationships with ourselves, and that makes it exciting to get older because you have more confidence, more self-awareness, just more determination and more clear vision of what you want to be and what you want to create in this world. So I think that's a healthier approach to already have in your mind at a younger age. Wherever you are, I mean, studying is always better than not studying at all. So I would say that that's something that I would also really recommend, that I felt like really worked for me, and that maybe now I am, without even knowing it, because I think I don't think it's completely true that I was always thinking long term, but I was from a younger age interested in holistic health, even though I didn't know that's what you would call it, in the sense of how do I take care of myself, how do I eat well, how do I feel well, how do I manage my emotions better, how do I say to myself that age is just an opportunity for me to see how much better of a relationship I'm growing in myself and the relationships I have around me. So by also having, which is I think the next tip, by intentionally having a purposeful reason each year for you to enjoy the next milestone. Like now I'm 33, the next one is going to be 34. What would I like more of, you know? On my Instagram, I wrote a bit about it in the sense that I feel like for this year, it's more about grounding in what I've already learned, in the sense of continuing to trust the values and practices that I have been doing over the years, that they will continue to carry me through, and just enjoying of the presence of knowing that all is well and always will be in one way or the other. I feel like that has been the biggest focus when I transitioned into this new chapter. But yeah, so basically, even for you, like being intentional about what you want to feel, experience, let go of in each milestone you reach, like for yourself, not to prove anything externally, but for your own development as a person, because only you know you from day one to where you are now. You are the person who is with you 24/7. So having that approach is also very good for us, especially as women, not to overvalue our existence on this planet in communities based on how we are seen and how we are valued from external factors. I think when I was younger, I really loved listening to this channel called Style IQ, because they would interview women of all ages, just talk about their experience. They interview a bunch of different people, but I remember when I started watching them, it was mostly women, and I really loved I've always loved hearing stories of women, their lived experience, even when I was younger, like whether they're older or younger, like there's something fascinating about learning from other people in their life, especially when they're sharing so vulnerably. And I would always hear some stories about people who were a bit older, and that one thing that was really hard for them is that as a woman, at certain points, you reach an age where you become invisible. And I was like, oh, wow, like, what does that mean? Because it's so interesting. Like, we go from being kids, and then our bodies develop to a certain degree, and then we get all this unnecessary attention, uncalled for attention. But at the same time, there is a day with all of that will stop to some degree. Like, nobody will care that you're walking the street. And on one hand, what a freedom, what a liberation that you can just be. But because of the society we live in, there's also this other feeling that now you're invisible, you have no value in this kind of society, because there's no men to view you and to see you as something sexually desired, right? It's so sad that it's almost like we're dogs that are trained to respond to this attention, and then we internalize it as a thing that means that we are seen and we are validated and we are appealing, but then it disappears and then we don't know what we are. That's why I think it's already important, even when you are younger, that you base your identity on other things than how you look. Obviously, that's not a shocker, but I think in a way, if you are lucky and at the same time unlucky enough to be somebody who is to some degree attractive, in the sense that you will get a lot of attention as you exist through your life as a woman, that can be a curse in itself in some way. I mean, in your younger days, maybe that will give you a lot of opportunities, open a lot of doors for you, but it's also even more sadder when all of that disappears, because it's not something you can continuously have in a way that society values it, right? And that can also create age anxiety within yourself, but also a weird women to women interactions, because maybe then instead of seeing your younger female friends, you will see them as competitors for their attention now that you are no longer going to get. And I feel like that's such an unhealthy way of existing as women, because women communities are so necessary for a healthy community, and even for our own well-being. To have good relationships with other women is also a great indicator of how balanced we are within ourselves as well. That's why, like, whenever a woman tells me, I think I've said this before, but I'll repeat it. Whenever a woman tells me, like, oh, I don't like hanging out with women, I prefer to hang out with men because I think women are so dramatic, or da-da-da. I'm like, girl, as I grow older, at least, I feel like I appreciate more and more, like, women communities and women bonds and friendships and so on, because we really, really do freaking need each other. And so by opting out of that intentionally, it's because even if you have that to a certain degree, yes, that is a currency in itself, and maybe you can attract a lot of beautiful opportunities for yourself, but don't over-identify with that kind of attention, you know? And this is also something I think I talked about with my friends, in the sense that there's a lot of men that don't know how to be nice and friendly to women unless they're interested in them sexually, which I think it's a whole conversation by itself. That a lot of women are used to being kind to other people, women or male, just naturally because, but a lot of men grow up feeling that you should only be nice to women if you find them sexually attractive. And I think it's such a sad way of existing, you know, because women are great companions that can make great friends. Even the whole idea of friend zoning, which you hear more from men rather than women. It's rare that you hear a woman complaining, oh, he just wants to be my friend. But men like complain and create a whole culture around it, because they often don't value women beyond their potential to date them, or to some degree. And I think that's something that we also have to be aware of within ourselves, in the sense that, okay, this is a society I live within, and maybe there's some things that are going to open up for me or be easier for me in a male-dominated world because of how appeasing some men might find me. But at the same time, I'm not going to internalize that that's my entire value as a woman in this society. And I think the best way to do that is already have things that you are looking forward to having as you get older. Like, for example, for me, with working with holistic living, holistic healing, with my focus on decolonization, or my social enterprise work, or even my writing, my art, I know that all of those things are only going to get better as I get older. I know that because I'm going to be better, because I'm going to learn more. I'm going to have had experienced more things. I'm going to have different kinds of interactions with people that will enrich all of those elements. So for me, getting older then in that regard becomes a bonus to all of those things. And being able to live in harmony with those realities, like not denying that you do have this whole world where your currency in the male-dominant world can affect you to a certain degree, or the accesses you have. And even amongst women, because women also care about stuff like that. Like, is this person beautiful? We respond differently to people that we think are attractive. And all of those things affect what kind of opportunities you might have access to. I am a big believer that yes, pretty privilege is a real thing, and if we live in the world and we have to have a realistic perspective of even how we are going to go through it, because we are all our attractiveness is varied in so many different ways, and where you live, even maybe you are a person of dark skin in a very colorist environment. There's so many things that you have to take into account. But either way, even for me as a dark-skinned woman in a mostly Eurocentric world with maybe mostly Eurocentric values in beauty, that in itself also has also helped me like carve out my own way of seeing my own beauty and seeing my own way of existing and embracing that beauty and adding to that beauty in the things that I value rather than in the things that were told to me should be important for someone like me. And as I get older, I get better and better at that. Like even the idea that now it's really like hot and summery here, so I've been going to the beach a bit more, even just like going out during my lunch break to read in the park, and the sun is usually out. And thinking that when I was younger, like that feeling of getting darker during summer, like that's also a form of thing I've grown into, not fearing that and actually thinking that what a beautiful thing that in the summer I get to become a bit darker, which also gives me a better, more unified complexion. And also I feel like I look healthier when I have this kind of skin, because maybe that's the skin, not maybe. If I had stayed my butt in my natural environment, that is this skin and even darker, because summer has only begun. And I do plan on continuing to go to the beach, but I'm mindful. I'm not crazy. I'm not out there living like a white girl. I'm mindful about how much and how long, because I still want to take care of myself again holistically, but also get the benefits of the great energy source that we all exist from. But I feel like that's another way that I've enjoyed growing and embracing my kind of beauty as I get older, in the sense of being my own unique space of what I value as attractiveness by embracing and highlighting the things that make me unique, you know. And I think as we get older as women, we become only more confident in that and taking up space in the way that we think is valuable to us, and not just what we are told to mimic back. And I find that fascinating and exciting, and it's another thing that we can add to why we shouldn't have aging anxiety, but rather see it as an opportunity and a beautiful journey where you will get to know and learn more about yourself. I think another thing I can add to that is, because you are more conscious about the kind of feminine community you are building around yourself, I think that it's also helpful to be open and vulnerable in seeking counseling from a diverse group of women. Particularly for me, I prefer like my more older women, in the sense like going to either my mom or my aunts. But even if I can't go to my immediate family, like seeking that kind of advice from people online who are that much older. Not like asking them, but hearing their perspectives. Like, for example, people who are maybe married, had kids, got divorced, or even like elderly queer black couples, or even the things like menopause, you know. And maybe I'm very far away from menopause, like knock on wood, you never know. But even stuff like that, there's a podcast I follow that I think it's called The Black Girl's Guide to Menopause. And obviously, like I said, I'm not really that close to menopause, but I'm just interested in all the stages of womanhood, and I want to hold space for all of that space, for all those phases already. And I think that in a way also takes away a lot of the shock of certain things changing or you growing into certain areas, because you're learning from people who are already there, but also be mindful of the people you learn from, because there's some people who are growing older, but they have a kind of very defeatist way of seeing their aging. In any time or phase in our life, those are people you need to be mindful of. But there are people who are aging joyfully, but also honestly, because you also don't want somebody who's delusional. But you want somebody who has a more grounded perspective in that and is enjoying and intentionally, gracefully aging. And finding those kinds of people, those kinds of women, and hearing their stories. And even as a young person, even when I was in my early 20s, when I was 19, like, I feel like that has also given me more grounding in what kind of experiences I might look forward to, or what kind of experience I should prepare for already, what kind of experience I can already add where I am, by how I live my life, how I eat, how I care for my body, can have a better transition into when I reach that age. I think all of that is so, so important. And you wouldn't have that if you're just with your age mates all the time. So I really, really can't say that enough. Get a diversified age group of women in your life that you can learn from, even if it's not people who you're friends with. Like, follow people online with it. There's lots of like sweet old elderly women, I think I've talked about that before, who have YouTube channels like from all over the world. Like, watch more of those kinds of people, or even podcasts by elderly women. Yeah, I think that's such a good way for you to not fear, because it's not the unknown. It's not going to happen to you randomly. It's something you already live in community with, even if it's just digitally, right? I did talk about wellness and having a holistic healthcare routine in your everyday life kind of also ensures that you're taking care of yourself as you go on. And I feel like that's just something you can break down to your everyday routines, like making sure that each day you do something for your mind, for your body, for your soul, or combine all three. Something that makes you feel like, okay, I've kind of checked in with all the areas in my body that I need to care for and I need to sustain and have a healthy relationship with. It's not something that you'll always be good at, but continuously leaning towards such a practice will give you better results than not doing anything at all, obviously. So that's also something that I think is quite important. Even when it comes to nutrition, being very mindful of women-specific nutrition, and especially if you come from a different ethnic background, like seeing what you might be relevant for you because of your genetic makeup, healthcare, what kind of healthcare is respectful of your holistic context as somebody from a different culture, race, what have you. There's so many things that I'm just excited about learning about and becoming better at, because there's so much information out there and so many beautiful, strong, intelligent women creating so much useful knowledge that we have a way of getting that we never had access to. Like, the amount of podcasts I listen to maybe in a week, if I had to read the same amount of books, I wouldn't have that much time, because I try to do it like while I'm walking or doing other things around the house, and I'm just always learning all these things. And I'm just so grateful to live in such a time where that is possible, right? Okay, guys, I don't want this to go on and on forever, but I feel like with all of that, I think if you do currently feel some age anxiety, it's quite important that you clarify where that anxiety is coming from, where that internalized ageism is also coming from. All that to say is that by having a more intentional approach to your own aging journey, I think you will have a better acceptance of you growing older and enjoying the process, because it's not just about fulfilling some external, externally created checklist, but it's because you are actively active, you're intentionally active in your own life and the values that you want to live out and become better at and continue practicing as you grow older, and the communities you want to be a part of and what you want to add to that. The older I get, the more knowledge I have and the more things I can use with my clients, with the people I work with, my holistic healing practice, and the more things I can add to what I can teach, and the more things I can add to what I can share with the world. So for me, I see that as a privilege. That's something beautiful because I'm intentionally investing in the kind of person I want to become as I get older, just not even mentally, how I'm preparing for that, And I think that's a more calming and more intentional way of going through. And that could be different for you, but just if you do feel that anxiety, like ask yourself that, have I internalized ageism? How do I feel about people who are older, women that are older? Do I judge them because they're older? Do I think, one of the things, I'm going to come back to this. One of the things I've really been enjoying, because like I said, I've been going to the beach more, is just sitting there and being in awe of all the different female bodies, just that. This is such a beautiful thing, like, to get to this degree, because when I was younger, I was more judgmental because I was judgmental about my own body. But the older I've become, the more accepting I've become of my own body. I enjoy being at the beach and just looking at all the women, like, in all, like, from children to teens to in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 60s, with their bodies that have sagged. You can see some that had babies. So, and I'm like, oh my God, that's all womanhood. And I wish I could take, I don't know, immortalize it or make that feeling more fixed in some way. Like sometimes I think, maybe I should draw more stuff that shows this as well, because that's one way that I like to bring out my feelings. It's like, okay, let me put it in a drawing or something that I can immortalize. I don't know. But it's something that I've really been enjoying doing, like just to see them in that neutral space, And of course, I don't know what these women might be struggling with or the anxieties they might have around their bodies, but it's so beautiful to exist in those spaces, like at the beach, for example. Even when you're walking the street and be like, that's a woman that looks like that, that's a woman that looks like that, that's a woman that looks like that, and you're not thinking about like aesthetics and the way that we think about them every day, but just the human body is a wonder, and the female body is a wonder by itself. And I think that also helps you have a better internal vision of growing older and even your own body changing, because you expose yourself to different bodies around you of other women, and as they age, some women are very fit, some women are very a bit more chubby or fat, some women are have like boobs that sag, some women maybe did some stuff to their bodies and got them up again. Like there's so many journeys that we can be on as we get older, and I think that's something that we can, in a neutral body experience, like there's so many ways to live on this planet as a woman in so many bodies. And as we get older, there is so many ways that our bodies are going to change, and expose yourself to that. Don't just spend 10, 20, 30 years looking at these specific body goals, like these specific body images, and then wonder why you have a weird relationship to your own body if you don't diversify with acceptance the many ways we all exist on this planet, And then I think the final thing I would add is to never forget that by itself, like despite this imperialistic, white supremacist, capitalistic kind of setting, to get older, it's a privilege. It's a freaking privilege. And not all of us make it to certain ages or can be here that long or are going to be here that long. Don't waste your time feeling bad because you turned 30-something, 40-something, or even 20-something, Say that, oh my goodness, I'm still here. It's beautiful to still be here. And I think that's something that I feel very proud to feel in my 33-year chapter on this planet. I think it's beautiful to feel like I'm really liking being here. And again, it's not like because I've accomplished something so amazing, but just I feel good, I feel it felt good. It feels good to be here. And I also think that part of that is also because of course, my continuous efforts in holistic living and living in harmony with myself and my nature, which I continue to have to continue working on. But I see the fruits of those years of doing that and being consistent with those efforts, and yeah, just accepting life in different ways and also creating healthier environments for you to exist, and all of that helps, obviously. I think that's what I'm going to leave you guys with. This has been a very long video, but just don't forget that. And I'm not saying that how dare you not want to be here or not enjoy your time here, because your body, your feelings, your everything, you have the right to that. But I would just say that somebody who maybe has been where you might be, if you're feeling anything opposite to that, is it does get better and it does get more enriching. And I'm not saying that now this is my state forever. I make space for whatever might come or how it might come, but I want to continue creating a stable foundation for me to bounce back on, so I bounce back differently. So I bounce back more stronger and more quicker. And I feel like I've achieved that over the years, so that makes me very proud. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that it's of benefit. I'm sure it will be to at least one person there watching it, because this is stuff that I wanted to learn and hear about. And I feel like there's even more to dig, but I would love to hear from you guys as well about your experience as women, as aging, and even cultural experiences with that, or even your own heritage with women and aging, like how they say it in your own particular culture, or even how you are trying to change your approach to it. Whatever you want to share, I'll be more than happy to hear more about that. If you ever need some guidance or a safe space to work on things holistically, this is another thing. I've become really much better at trusting the things I can bring to the world and the values that I can add in my own special way. So if you ever want a holistic life coach or somebody to help guide you through that, I feel like guide is much better, like a holistic guide. I will definitely with joy be your girl, and you can always find the information for that in my description box, right? Otherwise, I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in my next video, guys. Bye.
Baby, love me 'cause I'm playing on the radio. Pick me up and take me like a vitamin, 'cause my body's sweet like sugar venom, oh yeah. And baby, love me 'cause I'm playing